Hello my friends, AmyR here from Prairie Paper and Ink with another video for the Picket Studios YouTube channel. Today we're going to make some Halloween cards that are non-traditional colors, basically rainbow, and combining a new set with an oldie but goodie favorite stencil of mine. We're going to do a little bit of easy ink blending, heat embossing, all the things. As always, everything I used is listed and linked in the description box below the video, so you can just expand that and check it out. And let's get into making these cards. So first off, I'm going to work on my backgrounds. And I have the Picket Studios Indian Summer Stencil, which I'll get to in a second. But first, I just want to lay down some color. And I have some distressed watercolor paper here, the pre-cut like 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 pieces. And I am slapping ink on. Literally, we're not going to worry about this. We're just going to get some color down. I'm using some of my Picket life-changing blender brushes. I'm not even changing brushes. Literally, this is just, we just need to get color on. That's it. So I'm using Distress inks, and I used, for the first panel, I used mustard seed, wild honey, and picked raspberry. Got that color on, set it aside. And then I'm just going to repeat the process with another trio of inks, which is going to be Twisted Citron, Peacock Feathers, and Wilted Violet. And grab just another brush for this. And distress watercolor paper especially, because they're made to work together, you know. The watercolor paper is made to work with these inks. You'll notice when you add ink to it that you've got a lot of leeway. Like you can kind of push color out of the way when you're layering, etc. And again, I just wasn't worried about this. I wasn't going for a smooth blend because we're going to stencil over this. And the stencil is going to basically kind of cover the majority of it. So after I was done just adding that bit of color, cleaned off my work surface, and then I grabbed my paper inking palette. This one is the 8x8 one. I don't take the back off of these palettes, the smaller ones sometimes, but these will cling amazingly well to glass. But just FYI, they will cling. So I prefer to just leave them on the backing sheet it came on, and then I just take like the front backing sheet off, and then my cardstock holds to it, my stencil holds to it, we're good to go. So I put the Indian Summer stencil over this. I love this stencil. I've used it so many times, and it's just, I don't know, this pattern is so perfect. And then I just blended those exact same colors in the exact same spots, just with a heavier hand. So now you can tell why it didn't matter. That first light layer, irrelevant. You know, it was just there to fill it in. So I didn't want the background to have like the stark white of the pattern, just a lighter version. And then to clean the palette, I just wipe it with a baby wipe and then wipe it with a cloth. The inking palettes is the same high quality photopolymer as your stamps. So you do not want to use harsh cleaners. You do not want to use alcohol on it, anything like that. You do not leave them soaking in water. They will stain. This is a new one. I have only used this a couple times. So right now mine is pristine. It will not stay this way. It will get heavily stained over time because just photopolymer will absorb some inks and things like that. It's fine. It's still going to work great. But the biggest thing is no alcohol, no abrasive cleaners. Just a gentle stamp cleaner at most. A bit of water. It cleans up great. So I did the same thing with the second background using those same 3 colors, the mustard seed, the wild honey, and the picked raspberry. And then I laid these out and I spritzed with my distress sprayer, just holding the nozzle, like when you press the nozzle only halfway so you get the big splotchy bits. And because these were distress inks, they react wonderfully with water, especially on distress watercolor paper. So I ended up doing this twice. Let the water sit for a few seconds, doesn't take much, and then I press a paper towel into it and it lifts all that color. So I've got this splotchy, fun, it's just fun. It really is. And then of course I'm going to add splatter, especially because these are like supposed to be Halloween cards. So I put these in my splat box and I grabbed some black gouache, put a bit of that onto one of my little palettes, and then I'm going to water this down a bit so that it gets to just a thinner consistency. And then I'm going to heavily splatter these backgrounds. I wanted a lot of splatter and it just works. Like the pattern from the stencil and the colors and the water droplets and then the splatter, these were just fun. You know, if you don't have time to make, full cards start to finish, making backgrounds, it's so satisfying. And you don't even have to do even from the blending to the stenciling to the splatter all at once. You could just do like blending and then stenciling. And then later, if it's like, oh, this could use some splatter or this could use some this, that, you know, it's just a fun way to spend some time. So for my main images, I'm using the Spooky Flight stamp set. They have these really neat, just, I don't even know what word to describe that. Spooky. They're spooky butterflies. Who'da thunk? Love it. So I have some vellum and I cut it to A2 size, and I specifically lined up, like I chose 3 stamps that fit on this A2 panel. Even though I'm going to die cut these, there was a method to the madness. So I lined the stamps up exactly how I'm going to place the images on the card. So I made sure they fit onto an A2, you know, space, because a couple of these stamps are huge. So picked the 3 that I wanted to use. And then I used my anti-static powder tool on the vellum. That'll keep any embossing powder from clinging to where it doesn't want to be. And then I'm inking up the stamps with a clear embossing ink, closing the lid of my Misty, pressing that into the vellum. And then I'm going to use some black glitter embossing powder. I don't have a link to this specific, the one I'm using is a Nouveau brand. I don't have a link to it, but I'll link to a similar one. Wow does a similar one. Black embossing powder would work great too, even though I know I have said in the past, I personally kind of detest black embossing powder because it's just a nightmare to work with. But on vellum, it's amazing. Because just vellum resists embossing powder better than regular cardstock. Black embossing powder is just kind of a bum, but it shows up beautifully on vellum. But I have this black glitter embossing powder and it just works, especially with these images and the creepiness of them. But then you add the black glitter, it's like, So coated it with that, tapped off the excess, melted it with my heat tool. And then I'm going to use the coordinating die set to die cut all of these. And the stamps are still in my Misty because I'm going to come back to those when I do the insides of the cards. So they were still lined up where I wanted them, etc. Because yeah, once you die cut them, it's kind of technical. It doesn't matter where you place them if you're planning on die cutting. But like I said, there is a method to the madness. So I'm cutting into the magnet of my Empress sandwich stack for my Empress die cut machine. I finally relented. It's not recommended by the manufacturer, even though Anna Griffin herself apparently cuts into the magnet. It works great. It's just you will eventually have to, but no different than like die cut plates. Those have to be replaced too. So especially with something like this, it was convenient because I didn't have to tape the dies into place. So anyway, I die cut all my butterflies. And then I used the words from that same Spooky Flight stamp set. This time I just stuck them onto an acrylic block, because I'm just going to stamp them onto this scrap of black cardstock, which again, I used my anti-static powder on. And then I inked up the words and stamped them with clear embossing ink. This time I'm covering them with some detail white embossing powder and tapping off the excess, doing that a couple times to make sure I got all of the letters coated with the embossing powder. And then once I've got that on there, tap off the excess, same thing, melt this with my heat tool. And then off camera, aka I forgot to press film, I wiped off the excess anti-static powder with a microfiber cloth and then used the coordinating dies because the die set die cuts all the butterflies as well as the sentiments. So I got all my sentiments die cut. And then to adhere these vellum butterflies to these panels, I'm just using some liquid glue right down like the center where the body is, like hiding it behind the heat embossing so that it doesn't show through the vellum. And also by doing it this way, the wings naturally curl up, because the moisture from the glue just causes vellum to curl. And in the case of something like the butterflies, it just gives it this extra fun sort of look. You know, it creates dimension, but it's vellum. So these will fit nicely in an envelope. It'll be fine. So once I got the butterflies adhered, I then took the sentiments and popped those into place with foam squares so that those have a bit of dimension. And I was thinking like, you know, those specimen cards, like that's kind of what was somewhat the inspiration for this, you know, how they have like the titles of the type of bug, etc. So stuck those onto the butterflies. And then for the insides of the cards, started filming this and then my camera stopped filming. So that was great. Caught it before I got to the second one. So the butterflies all lined up. exactly where they need to be. They're all centered, everything. So I just put my card bases into my MISTI. These are top folding A2 white note cards. I'm using the same colors of ink. So the first three was the mustard seed, wild honey, and picked raspberry. This one, twisted citron, peacock feathers, wilted violet. And I'm using my little pint-sized paper pouncers and to ink up the stamps, because that way I can get all three colors of ink onto each of these butterflies, which is one of the things I love the most, I think, about the pint-sized paper pouncers, is I can get multiple colors with these little sponges, and it's kind of perfect. So I inked up these butterflies, and again, this could be a card front, you know, a little more clean and simple, add a sentiment like I'm doing, and call it a day. But this is just the inside. So after I had inked up the butterflies, I grabbed a sentiment from the A Wee Bit Wicked stamp set. It had a Happy Halloween sentiment, which was the same font as the words I used on the front of the cards. So I stamped that with VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink. And then I'm going to adhere these panels to their respective card bases, making sure I matched up like the same color combos with each one. And also making sure that, you know, the card opens in the right spot, because yeah, you do that once, you know, you assemble the card upside down or backwards, etc. Happens. So adhered those to the card bases, and that's it. I decided not to add any other bling, etc. I was kind of just happy with these, and I wanted the spooky butterflies to kind of be the main attraction with their curled up wings and the black glitter embossing powder. These were just fun. So, like I mentioned in the intro, I will have links to everything I used in the description box below the video. So you can just expand that, and all the info will be there, all the links, all the things for anyone who is interested. And then, as always, a huge thank you for taking the time to watch my videos. Thumbs upping and commenting, always very much appreciated. It helps a ton, and I love it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you, and I'll see you all very soon in another video. Bye.